Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Siesta Podcast. My name is Colton Steiner, and thank you for tuning in. Today we are going to be talking about a couple things that really pique my interest. But first off, the first thing we'll be talking about is the Cleveland Browns 2020/2021 season, and going across my favorite moments from this season. And then after that, we'll be talking about some Disney live action stuff. So I'm excited about this podcast. This is going to be very fun for me to talk about because the Browns, let's start off with them. What a season. This was the best season in my lifetime, and for the first time that in my life, I can actually look forward to the next season. And I was disappointed when the season ended because in my entire life, all I've seen has been pretty much failure, and the only thing I've looked forward to is the season ending. And when the final 16th game of the season was over, I would say, thank God. And I would lean back and just enjoy that Cleveland Browns football was over. But now it's now that the Browns are good and the season's over, I'm sad and I have to wait 8 months just to see him play again. But you know what? What a year, like I said. I mean, while it's a disappointing ending, we lost to the Chiefs in a very close game, I am still incredibly proud of this team. I mean, let's look at it. It was the best season since 1994. We finished 11-5, 12-6 with playoffs, if you want to count those in, 1-1. Got our first playoff win since 1994. Like, this is insane. This team made so much progress this season and had so much adversity to overcome. The amount of injuries we had on our defensive side, and then losing Odell 5 games into the season, it's just great to see this team make these strides. But as we look into the future, I think this is clearly a Super Bowl caliber team. And the joke is, like, every year, Cleveland Browns fan, well, there's always next year. There's that hope. And it's an actual serious saying now. They can compete for the playoffs. You were head to head with the former Super Bowl winning teams, the Kansas City Chiefs, and just barely lost. Like, while you didn't have a great game, that's a great accomplishment and great thing to look forward to into next season. And while they're a great team, they do need a better defense. And we can be a serious threat if we can build up that secondary. So I'm excited to see what offseason moves the Cleveland Browns can do. And they can just build that secondary up, get some guys, trade some guys, get them in, and maybe get a better defensive line because Olivier Vernon is not going to be back next year. I mean, even if the Browns do re-sign him, he's got an Achilles injury that's going to take almost the entire season to recover from. So that's something to keep an eye out for, is how are the Browns going to do when it comes to the defensive line, and if they're going to make any trades, big trades like trading Odell this offseason. So I'm intrigued to see what happens there. But one thing I don't want the Browns to do is touch their offense that was on the field in the last game of the season. Any player that is out there, whether it's an offensive lineman, a running back, or wide receiver, don't trade them. And anybody who brings up Jarvis Landry needs to be traded. Anyone that brings up that statement deserves a swift slap in the back of the head. I mean, this team is a great team. Why are you wanting to change it? I don't understand why people are so blind to the fact that he was one of Baker's best receivers. So I don't understand why people would want to trade Jarvis Landry. It's asinine. Don't touch this offense. And we got to make sure to run the ball first next year. I mean, we came into the Chiefs game with a lot of passing attacks. And while I love our quarterback, who he can pass the ball, and I love our receivers, we need to run the ball first. I mean, that was a big kryptonite for us against the Chiefs, was our ability to stop running the ball, and that kind of took us out of the game. But looking at the man under center, our franchise quarterback, Baker Mayfield, he's our QB. I mean, I don't care what people say. Oh, he's not nearly as good as Josh Allen. He's not nearly as good as Patrick Mahomes. I don't care. The fact of the matter, the Browns took almost 15 to 20 years to find one guy to stick with. I mean, what, 30 quarterbacks it took you to find this one, and this one's finally getting you the best wins you've had since 1994, since the 90s, and maybe one of the best QBs since Bernie Kosar? No, I do not want to get rid of him. I want to sign him to an extension, and I've had his back all season. I've criticized him when he deserves a criticism, but I've also given him praise when it is needed. I've been pretty much consistent on that. So I'm excited to see what happens with Baker next year as he gets Odell back, and whether they use Odell more in a deep threat situation rather than the shorter threat that they use the other receivers in, like Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, Kareem Hunt, and stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to seeing Baker Mayfield play the rest of his career in Cleveland. I want him to have like an Aaron Rodgers, a Dan Marino, a John Elway, and current Pittsburgh Steelers situation, Ben Roethlisberger. I want him to spend his entire career in Cleveland because I feel like he has the ability to be one of the best quarterbacks in this franchise history. And don't tell me, oh, he's only doing well because he has good receivers around him. Look at every single quarterback in the NFL that does well. They have a receiver or a group of receivers around them. I mean, you can't have a good quarterback if you don't have good weapons for him. There's very rarely a quarterback that does well without reliable receivers. I mean, you look at Tom Brady. Great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he always has consistent and reliable receivers around him. He's always had Gronk, Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola. I mean, you look at all these other players, and sure, I do also agree that a quarterback helps elevate a receiver. I mean, you look what Baker Mayfield has done for Rashard Higgins. No one really knew who Rashard Higgins was, but this season, his ability and skills just really took off. I mean, I was a big fan of Rashard Higgins in numerous seasons before this, so I knew what he was able to do. But a lot of people around the league just didn't know much about Rashard Higgins. They thought he's just another one of the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks that they're just shifting through, and he's not a big deal. I've said this all along. I think the relationship and chemistry between Baker and Rashard Higgins is one of the best out there. So while it is great to have a good quarterback, if you don't have good receivers around them, it's going to be really hard to build a team. So that's why I really like this offense, and why I really think this team has the ability to have numerous record-breaking seasons for this organization and numerous chances to make the playoffs and even make the Super Bowl and even win the Super Bowl. So, but in the offseason, it's going to be interesting what the Browns do. Like I said, the defense needs a total overhaul in the secondary. I mean, I will give them the benefit of the doubt that they had a lot of injuries. Denzel Ward missed several games. He missed a couple games at the end of the year due to COVID. But then you look at Grant Pleat, the rookie coming into this year that pretty much sidelined the entire season because of an Achilles injury. Now you're looking at him. I don't know how good of a player he's going to be because of that Achilles injury. And then you also look at Greedy Williams. It's not just an injured shoulder or like a foot injury. It's nerve damage. So Greedy, he's like a flip of the coin. I have no idea how he's going to be performing next year and how much of a different player he'll be considering all that nerve damage. Heck, I don't even know if he'll ever play football again, considering we don't know the extent of that nerve damage. So this is why the offseason is going to be interesting. You have several options in the secondary, in the safety positions, cornerback positions, and then you look at other options that are right in front of you when it comes to the NFL draft and what players you could get in the first round. The Browns have the number 26 pick in the draft, and it feels weird picking that low, and it actually feels really weird not worrying about the NFL draft. So I'm intrigued and gonna keep an eye out to see what secondaries pop out at the NFL Combine, and we could be looking at a cornerback. Because I know some people are saying we should look at linebacker, which, while I agree that's a big position we need to work on, safety and cornerback is definitely the position I would like to attack first, and it's going to be fun. This is where football is fun. I mean, you look at the offseason, you look at the amount of changes you can get to better your team. The Browns have the pieces. They have the cap room to make those moves. So I'm like I said, really excited to see what this offseason looked like. So moving on to that, I think this team can be better than the 86 team, the 1987 team, and the 1989 team. All those teams made the AFC Championship and lost. I think we can be better than those teams. I mean, you look at the teams in the AFC, a lot of tough teams. You look at the Bills, tough team. Chiefs, tough team. Ravens, tough team. Miami Dolphins, they're coming up. They had a really good season, and it's going to be tough, but I think the Browns have a lot of potential to beat all those teams and compete for a Super Bowl. I mean, this is insane to say, but the Browns easily could win the Super Bowl next season. So I'm actually going to reminisce about this season, talk about my top 5 moments from the season. So let's start off at number 5. Number 5, the Browns come back against the Ravens. Yes, the Browns lost, but the comeback was incredible. Lamar Jackson leaves the game. Browns offense starts to ignite, starts to turn the wheels, and they showed so much heart and so much determination, and they drove down the field, and the problem was they scored way too fast. I mean, not many times would you say, man, we scored way too quick, man. We scored way too easily. Now they give the ball to the other team. They were able to go down the field, kick a field goal, and unfortunately lose the game, but that was a great turner. That was a great start to see what this team is capable of doing and what this team needs to improve on. So while we Browns did lose, that was such a fun game and such an incredible game by the Cleveland Browns offense to not give up and continue to play hard and work to beat the Baltimore Ravens. And like I said, Baltimore Ravens are one of the best teams in the AFC, and they need to be respected. But moving on to the number 4 favorite moment of this season is Jarvis Landry's touchdown throw to OBJ against Dallas. Okay, what a cannon. I mean, we've seen Jarvis Landry throw the ball before, but man, he threw an absolute dime right into the arms of Odell Beckham Jr. to his fellow LSU teammate. I mean, it was electric. I mean, we have a great quarterback with Baker Mayfield, but when Jarvis Landry gets that ball and he just yeets it downfield right into the hands of Odell, that was awesome. And the Browns offense was just amazing that game too. I mean, it was the first time they beat Dallas since, guess when? 1994. We should have taken the hint there that, man, we're getting a lot of similarities to 1994. Maybe, just maybe, this is a year we make a playoffs. We sure did. But that was number 4. I love that game. And really, the Dallas game was a great game to watch. While once again, the defense gave up so many points and allowed the team to come back, the Browns offense was able to shut them down and just show how good their offense was. And I think people kind of forget about that game because they were like, oh, Dallas wasn't that good. Dak Prescott is a great quarterback. And going on about them, everyone's saying, oh, do the Cowboys need to move on from Dak? No, you're an idiot if you want to move on from Dak Prescott. Dude has a great arm, has a great future, and hopefully doesn't regress because of that ankle injury he obtained this season. But it's great beating Dallas. I mean, whenever a team is able to beat Dallas for the first time since 1994, I think that's something to be proud of. Drop a Montgomery Gentry line right in there. But moving on from number 4 to number 3 is the first half against Tennessee when the Browns went up 38-7. This was the most insane offense I had seen against a team of this caliber. Like I was just talking about, when you rank up 40 plus points against Dallas, that's something to be proud of. But when you're able to go up against Tennessee, who is a great team that is playing for a playoff spot, and you go up on them 38-7 in the first half, that is insane. And most of the time you look at the Browns and we've never really been a first half team. So this season, that's what they were able to do numerous times. And this game against Tennessee was a great picture of that. I mean, when you're able to put up 38 points and a half, that's an impressive feat. And I believe that was like one of the best halves the Cleveland Browns have ever had in the history of their organization too. So that's why this was a big thing for me, and that's why it was number 3 on my list of top favorite moments. So moving on from number 3 to the number 2, I mean, how can you not like the comeback win against the Bengals? Baker Mayfield, a 5-play, 55-second drive, drove down 75 yards with no timeouts, and there was 1 minute and 6 seconds on the clock, and they left 11 seconds on the board. I mean, what a great comeback. And the Bengals offense is going to be good. Joe Burrow is going to be a great quarterback for them next year and in his future as it proceeds to go on. But I was impressed. That was the best game, I think, of Baker Mayfield's career up to that point. Not without a doubt. Went 22 of 23 passes, 297 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's all in the second half. Like, Baker Mayfield started 0 for 5 with an interception, and Odell got hurt in that first quarter. So he had a lot to improve on, and he did it at the snap of a finger. I mean, 22 of 23 straight, and his only incompletion was spiking the ball. So that's what blew my mind. His ability to do a complete 180, and from that moment on, Baker Mayfield played at another level that he didn't play at up into that point of the season. So I am very proud with what I saw from Baker in that game. It was like the spark that started the entire fire. That game kind of started the entire whirlwind that this team is capable of making the playoffs. So moving on to the number 1 moment of the season, and that is the Cleveland Browns win against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC wildcard game. I mean, let's look at this game. First off, first playoff win since 1994. First playoff win ever against the Pittsburgh Steelers. First win at Pittsburgh since 2005. It was also the first road playoff win on the road the Browns have had since 1969 against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, there were so many accomplishments set in this game. They set an NFL playoff record for most points in a quarter with 28. They tied an NFL playoff record for most points in a half with 35. They forced 3 turnovers, which is the most by a team in the NFL playoffs since 1991. And they didn't have a head coach, Joel Bitonio, Denzel Ward, Kevin Johnson, and numerous other coaches. So the amount of obstacles that the Browns were able to overcome just in this game alone was incredible. And starting with the first play of the game, the snap over Ben Roethlisberger's head into the end zone recovered by the Browns for a touchdown with it like 10 seconds off the clock. It was insane. How can you not put this game at number 1? It was probably the best Cleveland Browns game I have ever seen in my lifetime. And while there are not many games I can say that I'm proud to watch, this game as a whole was just insane and just great to watch because of the amount of points the Browns were able to put up and the domination that they were able to have on defense. So that was my top 5 favorite moments of the season. And while there were a lot of things that didn't make this list, this season was great as a whole. Let's just make that one thing clear. There were so many moments, so many little things that were so enjoyable to watch. And next year is going to be even better. I easily believe the Browns can win 12 games and win the AFC North. So looking at who they're playing against, the Ravens are going to be a big competition, I think. And if Joe Burrow is able to get healthy, depends on when he can come back next year. I think the Cincinnati Bengals can be a very good contender in the AFC North. But I'm excited for the Browns. A lot of hope. Don't get too discouraged, guys. This team is capable of a lot of things going into next year. So let's move on to talk about Disney live action. And I know they've kind of gotten a lot of flack for being money grab movies, but in my opinion, I enjoy the Disney live action movies. I think just the fact that people are upset that they're remaking these great movies is understandable, and I'm not trying to ridicule their opinion because it definitely can be a fair opinion, because if something's already great, why are you trying to be better than it, or why are you trying to recreate it? At the end of the day, we're all just here to get entertained, and I'm going to start by naming off the last couple Disney live action ones that I think were pretty successful in my eyes. First off, Aladdin. I really loved Aladdin, and the fact of the matter, the music was great. They tried a different storyline with with Will Smith, who plays the genie, starting out with his family. You don't know that he's the genie yet. You kind of have that idea because we knew Will Smith was the genie coming into this, but why is he telling this story? But it's a new way of telling Aladdin's story, and they go through the opening credits and it shows like all the characters, and I love the cinematography in this. The blue genie kind of looked weird, but you know what? I don't think they could have done anything differently to make it any better. But I love the music, the vocals were amazing. The only thing I didn't like, and I didn't like it coming into the movie, was Jafar and how young he was. Because one of the biggest lines and one of the biggest reasons that Princess Jasmine didn't like Jafar is the fact that he was quote unquote so old. So that's what I didn't really like. But then again, it's one of those things where it's a minor, very minor fix change that I think didn't affect the movie all that much. And it was still a great movie. So when I'm going to compare the next three movies, starting with Aladdin, I'm going to mention the Rotten Tomatoes score. And the reason why I think this is important is because of how much enjoyable they are for the audience. So the Rotten Tomatoes score for Aladdin is 94% audience score versus a 57% tomato score. Like, the drastic change there is insane. And this is why whenever I go and watch a movie that I haven't seen before, or I just saw it on Netflix and I'm trying to figure out whether to waste my time watching this movie, but I always look at the audience score for movies because I so much more prefer the audience opinion versus the reviewer's opinion, because reviewer's opinion, a lot of time they can be biased and versus a certain narrative. And I'm going to talk about narratives going on in the future, but Aladdin I thought was a great movie, and the reviews from the press I don't think are fair towards it. That's why I go to the audience score, which is 94%. One of the best remakes of a Disney regular movie that I've seen them make yet. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for Disney live action movies, but so far this one has been my favorite. But moving on from Aladdin to The Lion King. Now let's get this out of the way. It was absolutely beautiful. I mean, this was a great step for animation. I know it's a live action movie, but it was still animation because you had to still work with CGI and stuff like that. But it was amazing to watch. Vocals, once again, Disney does not disappoint with the music, and that's what you come for when you listen to Disney live action, and that's what you are excited to hear, is how these actors are able to incorporate their own version of this song, and they did it beautifully. Timon and Pumbaa, when they sang Hakuna Matata, that was so good, and those two actors just nailed their characters. Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen, who played Timon and Pumbaa, just nailed it. Donald Glover was Simba, and he also did a great job there. So I was very pleased with Lion King. I thought it was very enjoyable, and they didn't change anything. And this is where we go into the aspect of, I don't like when people drastically change the movie. If it's already a great movie, why are you trying to fix it? I mean, people want to see what they can change, and I don't see why. If you're going to take out some of the greatest parts of this movie, and honestly, it's one of the greatest animated movies Disney has ever made with the original. So I don't know why you're trying to go back and change things to make it better. Just ride with it. We're just here to create entertainment. And that's what I think they did really well. And Jon Favreau, who I believe directed this, just did a tremendous job. But looking at the tomato meter, right again, the audience really enjoyed this movie at 88% versus the tomato meter where the reviewers and the press did not, as they give it a 52%, which, does it surprise me? No, it does not. And whenever I look at these, like I said again, I always take the audience score. If the audience enjoys it, I think it's going to be a good movie. But if the press enjoys it, I'm a little bit more hesitant there. Now, if they both enjoy it, it's okay. I'll take that for what it is. It's a great movie. But moving on to the next one. And this is the movie where I'm going to have the most problems with Disney's live action portrayal of this movie. Mulan, one of the best movies Disney has ever made. But what the flying crap was this movie? I mean, oh my gosh, when I watched this movie, I didn't even watch all of it. it brought me out of the movie. I didn't enjoy any of it. For one, I knew I had a bad feeling right at the very beginning where, one, they literally changed everything good that was about this movie, incorporated asinine things. One, no Mushu, they didn't have music, there was no Shang, and that's already a bad look. Like, going into this movie knowing those three things, I'm already have a lot of doubts about this movie. But right at the beginning, they already have this situation where Mulan is pretty much a god at everything, so there was no need to build her character whatsoever, unlike the original where she had to push herself to be better. But looking at the other side of the aisle, where you're looking at the villains, the bad guy wasn't even that menacing. I mean, Shan Yu, that big, bulky, threatening dude from the original Mulan, now he was menacing. He really put fear in your eyes. And the other problem is Disney said they wanted to go for a darker, but more realistic portrayal. They literally had a woman change into a bird. Like, even the animated one is more realistic than the new live action one. And when you change so much about a movie, I don't even consider this a live action portrayal of Mulan because of how bad this is. And this is where I bring up the conversation about the Rotten Tomatoes score. So looking at the tomato meter for this movie, they ranked it 73%. 73%, it is the highest of the last three movies I have talked about. The audience score, however, is in the different direction. They are at 49%, the worst score of all three movies. And this is why I listen to the audience, and because the audience opinion is the most important one yet. I don't care what the reviews, I don't care what the press say about the movie. The audience is the only one that matters. And if you don't please the audience, you're not going to have a good movie. And the actors, I don't really put any blame on them. They did what they could with the script, but the writing was bad. That whole thing was bad, and I'm all for a strong female character. That's why I really love Mulan. It really shows that women can do anything. Like, make a man out of you, it shows that woman can be better than a man in some situations. Like, it's so good. That's what I really loved about the original movie. They made it realistic for the time, but they also realized, man, this girl can kick ass. We should follow her and help her defeat Shan Yu at the end of the movie. That was great. That was an amazing scene where Mushu blows Shan Yu off the top of the building. That was pitch perfect. But what does this mean for future live action? I really love live action movies if they are done well, like Aladdin, like The Lion King. But if they are done like Mulan, I just can't get on board with it. It just ruins the good parts of the original and makes you wish that the animated one was the only one they made. But which one do I want them to make next? I really look forward to when they make a Hercules one, because one, that has one of the best soundtracks in all of Disney, in my opinion. The Gospel Truth, A Star is Born, Go the Distance, I Won't Say I'm in Love. There's so many great songs from this movie that I would love to see them make in a live action version. I know they've made live action versions of Hercules, but those are more serious, but something like this, where it's live action, a little bit more comical, like the Aladdin, like they did, and like the Lion King, and we know they're able to make great things with CGI, so I'm really looking forward to this movie. But the reason why I want them to make it as soon as possible is because they need to have Danny DeVito play Phil. He's the only one that is allowed to play Phil, and I don't see anyone else beating him for that role. He's the perfect person. There is no other actor that can fill that role for Phil. Only Danny DeVito can do it. But I also think Tarzan needs a proper Disney live action one too. So I know these are in rumors to be made, but I would love to see these two movies come out strong in the future because I think they could be great Disney live action movies. But I'm fine with making some storyline changes, don't get me wrong, but don't change the entire plot like you did in Mulan. Mulan was just ruined, and it could have been such a great live action, and I wouldn't mind if they tried to do it again with the proper writing and the right storyline and keep the dang music, and make sure to add Mushu too. Like, Mushu was awesome. Who doesn't like Eddie Murphy as Mushu? He played that role perfectly. So I would love to see that if they would ever remake the remake of Mulan, because that would be great. But sometimes I do wonder if these movies are trying to push a certain narrative rather than worrying about the story. And I think that kind of was the problem with Mulan. You're trying to show that women are very powerful, but the original Mulan showed that women can be powerful. And I think they worried more about that aspect than trying to write a good story. So I'm fine with them showing that women can do everything. I love that. Love every bit about that. But don't make that the prime goal first. Make a good story and then try and build a great character. That's the great thing about movies. It makes you feel powerful. It makes you feel that you can do anything. And that's what I love about film, is their ability to make stories that the audience can relate to. But don't take out the music for Disney live action 2. That is number one. I want to make that perfectly clear. Disney rides off the music in these movies. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Siesta Podcast. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast and Google Podcast, and make sure to also follow us on Spotify. So we will be back next week talking about other sports, movies, or whatever we come to talk about and chatter about on this show. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!